a couple of weeks ago and got him to agree to do an interview. If you don't know, Michael is one of the preeminent curmudgeons. Is that a fair term? Yeah, he's actually he's an analyst with an equity company. How do I do this? Make it go to the next slide. Let's try that. There we go. Managing Director, Equity Research at Wedbush Securities. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I'll bet he's going to tell us in just a second. So, and if you don't know, I'm Tom Buscaglia. I'm the chair of the IGDA Board of Directors. I'm also the game attorney, and I've been working in the industry for 20 blah 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 years. And you can learn about me at gameattorney.com. But this is all about you, Michael. So tell us first of all, explain to the attendees exactly what it is you do.
Well, I work for Wedbush Securities. It's a brokerage firm, 1,000 employees. I think we probably have about 1,100 or 1,200. Retail brokerage, investment bank, and a capital markets practice. So capital markets means we help companies raise capital, and we help institutional investors make better decisions about investing. Obviously, retail brokerage, you guys all have stock brokerage, you invest in the market. I am an equity research analyst, which means that I am a go-to guy on about 20. I cover 22 companies now, so 22 different stocks. The investment community on the professional side is divided up into what they call buy-side analysts and sell-side analysts. Buy-side analysts buy and sell stocks. Sell-side analysts sell research. So we are experts on a handful of companies each. The buy-side tends to focus on sectors, so somebody might cover all tech, media, and telecom, which is probably 2,000 or 3,000 companies. Nobody can know everything about 2,000 or 3,000 companies except Jim Cramer. So we help them to understand kind of nitty-gritty. And I'm also a lawyer by training, but I have an MBA. I was a finance guy for a long time. I've been doing this for 15 years. I was a tax lawyer and did M&A for about 15 years prior to that. So curmudgeon was actually the right term, because I think curmudgeon connotes an old guy, and I'm definitely an old guy.
Well, aside from your job, you seem to have a very broad, much broader understanding of the game industry in general, at least from the talks that I've heard you say. So is that correct? I mean, what's your relationship with the game industry?
Well, I cover, when I started, I was covering 11 video game publishers and 2 retailers, and the 2 retailers merged, and of the 11 publishers, 5 or 6 have gone away. So, Atari and Midway and Interplay and more than that, I can't even remember who else. Acclaim, 3DO, they all disappeared. So the industry is consolidated, and we're kind of paid more to cover more stocks, and 15 is kind of the norm on Wall Street. So I had to expand into other stuff, and I was intrigued by Bill Gates' presentation back in at CES, I think it was 2000, when he first talked about Microsoft getting into video games. Excuse me. And he had a vision of the connected living room with the Xbox as a centerpiece, and that actually resonated with me. It never occurred to me back in 2000 that we would all have smartphones and tablets and have portable internet, any place in the world that we found ourselves. But it did occur to me that delivering content over the internet was a very convenient way to access content for consumers that have more choice. So I focused on industries that delivered content over the internet, and I ended up covering a bunch of internet stocks like Pandora, like Netflix, obviously King and Zynga. So I've got a broader coverage. And then I just kind of rounded it out by covering movie exhibitors, just because I think the value chain of media is interesting, and it's kind of good to have a finger in the entire value chain to understand who wins and who loses at each distribution point. So I quite famously am negative on Netflix, and I quite famously or notoriously have been wrong for 3 years because I have believed that the content owners who sell to Netflix would behave rationally and they would extract economic rent from Netflix. So far, I've been wrong, and we'll see if that ends up being right. I'm pretty stubborn, but I actually think I am right. So I would change my mind if I thought I was wrong.
Well, if you wait around long enough, eventually you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's get down to a few questions. One of the obviously the IGDA is comprised of video game developers, and I'm probably guessing, at least from the names that I see on the attendee list, that most of the people involved here are in a management level in small to mid-sized studios. So I doubt that anybody from Valve is going to show up here to learn about the game industry, because I think they pretty much make the game industry. But there are certainly issues that I'm sure you're aware of, and even if it's just an opinion. So I have a couple of questions that I prepared, and one that came in from somebody else. Actually, since I solicited questions from outside, let me get to that one first, because this is kind of interesting. This is from a fellow named Ross Hirschman, and it says, what does it say about the future of the industry that Amazon and Microsoft are willing to spend millions and billions on acquiring companies like Twitch and Minecraft? How do these acquisitions influence the state of play, and are they an indication that business models may be shifting to focus more on targeted advertising than the sticker price of a given game?
All right, pretty broad question and a good one. I think you need to step back and think about the games industry as being born in the arcade and then morphing into PC and console. And when it was PC and console only, it had a pretty limited audience. I mean, you could say that there were 500 million or a billion PCs out there, but everybody didn't play PC games. I suppose they played solitaire, but they didn't buy, Doom. So the market probably peaked for consoles back in this past cycle, maybe the one prior, but under 300 million consoles out there. And the market for other types of games, meaning mobile, tablet, and desktop free-to-play, is much, much, much larger. Candy Crush alone has more than 300 million players. So more people played Candy Crush than own consoles. And there's some overlap. I mean, I think that a lot of hardcore gamers play Candy Crush. I do. But I think that the opportunity suddenly got so much larger that Facebook popped up and thought, maybe we're going to buy Oculus. Microsoft, I think, I said part of the reason I expanded my coverage was what Bill Gates said, and although he's merely a shareholder at Microsoft, he was no longer the chairman of the board, I think that his vision is very much alive, and I think that he views games as a way to access a much, much broader audience for all of media. I think that that's really where Microsoft's been going. I think that's definitely where Amazon's going. I mean, Amazon this year launched Fire TV and Fire Phone. They launched Kindle tablets years ago, but they've improved them to where they are high definition color displays. And I think that the guys who are expanding into the games business are looking at that 2.5 billion person connected internet market potentially to sell lots and lots and lots of stuff, as opposed to that 250 or 300 million console and hardcore PC market. So I don't think that Amazon expanding by buying Twitch, or Microsoft buying Mojang, or Facebook buying Oculus means the death of content as we all know it, as packaged goods sold for $50 or $60. I think it's intended to expand that market beyond packaged goods and to capture mind share among those people who play free-to-play games and who probably watch Netflix streaming and probably listen to Pandora or Rhapsody or and read books and do all sorts of things. There's a big, big, big opportunity there, but I don't think it's the death of packaged goods. And I think the right way to think about the addressable market for game developers is, think about it in the context of filmed entertainment. You can create something that is 2 hours long, that is best enjoyed in an IMAX theater and costs $200 million to make. So an Avatar or an Avatar 2, or you can create a YouTube video for 1 minute, and those are very different concepts. And the people who watch the 1 minute YouTube video aren't necessarily different from the people who go into the theater to see Avatar. They can enjoy both. Nobody says, oh, I don't have time to see Avatar because I'm going to watch this 1 minute YouTube video, and vice versa. So, that's the range, I think, of created content. And I think games are the same, that you have feature films that are high budget, and you brought up Valve. Everything Valve does is like that. And you have bite-sized, silly things like Flappy Bird that probably took one guy 3 days to make, that still was enjoyed by tens of millions of people. And they aren't mutually exclusive. And the in-between is, like the TV show, the TV series or something. And that might be a game like The Walking Dead that's sold in installments. It does generate revenue, but some people played 1 installment, some played 2, some played 5. And I think you'll probably see the packaged goods game business morph from all $60 AAA titles that cost $50 or $100 million to make, to a mix of those titles plus some smaller budget titles. And we've already seen it on Xbox Live, with our Xbox Live Arcade, with plenty of $10 and $15 titles. That's an outlet for people, and then obviously move on down the spectrum. Plenty of opportunity for guys to make, the bite-sized mobile games, and it doesn't take very much in revenue for 6 guys who spend 3 months making a mobile game to get payback. I should probably
it's good to hear somebody say that. Is that me or you?
No, it's my home phone. I'm sorry, I had to do this from home.
It's good to hear somebody say that these are not mutually exclusive. I'm kind of tired of pundits saying that remember the PC is dead.
Well, actually, one qualification. There is actually a cannibalization of handheld games by mobile, and not to say that most mobile games are even close to the quality of DS and 3DS games. It's certainly not close to the quality of Nintendo, but Nintendo first-party titles. But I think that the cell phone is, kind of a goal for most 9-year-old kids. They want a smartphone, and certainly they want it more at 10 and more at 11 and more at 12. And I think most parents are on a budget, and they're deciding between a handheld, game console and a tablet and a smartphone. And I think if you offered a kid their choice of one of the three, the DS or 3DS would be the third choice for about 90% of all kids. So I think that the handheld market is under assault, not because of the quality of the game content on mobile or tablet, but because of the price point of the three. And I just think that the handheld core gaming market is going to die a very slow death. I don't think it goes to zero, because there will always be wealthy people who can afford both. But I think that the market for handheld is very limited. It used to be the entry-level console. Now the smartphone or the tablet is the entry-level console. So I do believe in cannibalization there, just not cannibalization. Nobody is going to stop playing, Destiny or Call of Duty because Angry Birds 3 comes out. That's just not going to happen.
All right. We've got another question from the gallery, and I have all these brilliant questions, but this is kind of fun. I'd like to have them in here. This is I'm not sure who it's from, because I'm not that. Oh, it's from Rob Stanford. Do you think that as more and more big dollars are being spent to create large corporations, basically I believe he's referring to consolidation, which then house many smaller companies, and this has been going on in the industry for years, that this will create a diluted quality in gaming, in that as a result the valuation of the industry as a creative force would be diluted, and it would basically have devalued the industry as an entertainment medium?
I do, but I believe that statement describes the past more than the future. I think that if you look back prior to 2000, probably 2/3 of of big budget games were made by independent developers that might have been contract for hire employees, but they weren't full-time regular employees of the companies that published the games. And what the Electronic Arts and Activisions of the world discovered was that if we bring in the development talent in-house, we'll make more money. We can exploit the employee, we can pay them a much more fixed income, and we keep the upside if there's profit. And so back in the 90s and early part of the 2000s, Activision, EA were buying studios. And that was, how, studios like Infinity Ward, a bunch of guys left EA and they got bought by Activision. That's what we saw. I think that definitely diluted game quality, and we saw that, with THQ. We saw that with Midway. Their own studios made pretty bad games. But if you remember, Activision used to be the publisher for id games, Wolfenstein and Doom, and that development contract kind of died, and then id ended up being bought by whatever the hell it's called.
Bethesda.
I forget, ZeniMax. So, and then of course Carmack left and Romero left, and that whole studio is just kind of not as good as it used to be. So I agree. I think corporate ownership dilutes the creative process. And I'd say the one exception, because I'd say that this is consistent across all big corporate publishers. The one exception is probably Take-Two, who is my least favorite of the publishers as an investment for this very reason. They don't exploit their workers. They allow their workers to do whatever the heck their workers want.
So that's bad business, Michael?
Pardon?
Is it bad business not to exploit your workers?
Yes, it's bad business. I mean, there's exploitation. There's exploitation. I don't mean exploit them where I forgot the name of the studio that made L.A. Noire, but that in Australia. But those guys they had a lot of complaints about people were being forced to work 7 days a week, 12 to 15-hour days, and everybody was pissed about it. You can't exploit people that way. That's wrong. I'm talking about exploit them by giving them a 40-hour-a-week job and maybe 50 or 60 hours of crunch time and paying them handsomely, just not paying them upside if the game sells well. So it's bad business to share the profits with employees without limit, because that's not in the best interest of shareholders. It's good business to pay employees enough to keep them employed. And if you think back, you think sociologically about why people are employees, I'm a very good example. There is no question I would make more money if I were self-employed. I could sell the product that I create now for more money than I am paid. I know that because my employer probably makes 8 to 10 times what they pay me in profits from what I do. But
sounds like bad business, Michael.
But that's the same, I think, with lawyers in a law firm. It's like, why would you be a non-partner in a law firm? It's because you just need I like the stable paycheck, and it is bad business. And so a lot of employees would prefer not to have to deal with human resources and IT and the mail and whatever you need, rent, dealing with all that stuff. I'm that guy. So I think that there's a place for developers, but I agree. The guys who accept a standard wage for their effort probably aren't quite. They're probably more constrained creatively, and I think that's right. I think corporations tend to beat the creativity out of their employees. So it should be like the studio model.
One of the things I see in the captive studios is Marty O'Donnell refers to it as not being able to separate the golden goose from the egg. It's like publishers are all focused on the egg. They think that the IP is where the value is, and the people who make games have a firm belief that it's the team. And one of the things that I think, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is there have been some really successful studios in terms of both making money and making really great games. The ones that we all go, wow, holy cow. But it seems to me that when this happens, and I think Call of Duty is probably an example of this, where the profit motive, and I think that Activision probably did the right thing with Call of Duty in terms of making more money out of it by trying to push it out every year. But clearly, they just started pushing the same game out over and over again. And what do you think about the cultural impact of when the team a really core team that created a great IP is then sort of jettisoned in favor of being able to just crank out more of the same? Is there a way to cure that, or is that just an essence of what you were saying of the fact that the obligations to the shareholders?
I think Activision's success with Call of Duty is a symptom of the problem, and Activision fired the lead creators of Call of Duty, both Craig Allen at Spark and Jason and Vince at Infinity Ward, and they, if you remember back in the day, Infinity Ward was the good studio and Treyarch was the bad studio. Then suddenly Treyarch became the good studio. Now Infinity Ward's the bad studio. They added Sledgehammer to the mix, and I think those guys are very good. But Activision proved that any knucklehead can make Call of Duty because we've got the formula. And I guess with that game it worked, and probably less so because of the single-player campaign and more so because they just developed a gigantic multiplayer audience that had a network effect. So if all your friends buy the new one and they're off on a new map, you've got to do it too. So that's the exception, I think. I think that the commoditization of development talent leads to bad games. And as I said, Take-Two lets Rockstar do whatever Rockstar wants, and pretty consistently Rockstar titles are very highly rated. I think that the guys who just think anybody can work on any title see the game quality decline, and that's been the case at Electronic Arts, I'd say, for quite a while. The one that really kind of surprises me is Ubisoft, because they consistently make a good Assassin's Creed game with God knows how many employees. I mean, they have 4,000 developers, and God knows how many actually touch Assassin's Creed, probably 1,000. Actually, Ubisoft, the investor relations guy, emailed me today saying that poor Take-Two, they're constrained because they only have 2,000 developers. Ubisoft thinks 4,000 is the norm. So I don't know. I mean, you go look at Vince Zampella and Respawn. I think they made Titanfall with 75 people. So you guys know this far better than I. It doesn't take hordes of people to make a great game. It takes probably 100 really good people, and you can make a really good game.
Let's take it a little smaller, if you don't mind. And I know that this is probably not the major focus, since none of these guys are publicly traded, at least not that I know of. Although Rovio may be at this point. But what do you? One of the things that I've noticed is it seems to me like there was a huge opportunity for indies for a while, and that the first generation of indie developers have been able to do really well. But the second generation, it's been hit and miss, and the third generation, or the current generation of indies, are just, to me, almost facing insurmountable odds. And so, first of all, I'd like your sort of thoughts on just what the hell happened to indies.
I think it's that the stakes for a successful game got bigger and bigger with each new console generation. And it's very similar to the movie business. The average film used to cost $30 million to make, and you could make an independent film for $10 million that had all of the same kind of production values, because you might use lower priced stars, or you might get the stars to take equity participation. And that was the same with games. The average game probably used to cost $5 or $10 million, and you could maybe get away with a $2 or $3 million game and be competitive. Now, the average game is probably 50 or 60 million, and you just can't be competitive. You can't run a game at 60 frames a second, have a 20-hour campaign, and have full game quality, everything working perfectly without spending probably 20 or 30 million bucks. So it got so expensive that only a handful of independents, like Epic, like Valve, like Bethesda, could actually pull it off. But on the tablet, iPhone,
Android markets, where you can have a 4 or 5 man team. There's a tremendous number of people who are doing this now, and I'm not sure whether they're a market or serious players in the marketplace.
Well, it's supply and demand. I mean, obviously, if the game costs $10,000 to make, there's going to be a lot of them, and so it's hard to be found without a marketing budget. And as I said, those games are more analogous to the YouTube video than they are to the Avatar 2. So sure, it's like finding a YouTube video, though. You're not going to find it unless someone tells you about it. And so there's tons of games made, and I'm sure tons of really good mobile and tablet games that no one discovers. And it's always kind of curious why people discover the ones that they do.
Yeah, that's the trick, isn't it?
If we knew that, what is it about Candy Crush that attracted 300 million people? I don't know. To me, I mean, I'm playing it, but it feels very much like Bejeweled, but they added levels. It's just they added something that made it different. Levels and power-ups that you earn. It's just, I don't know, it's different.
I've heard you actually admit to spending money in that game.
Oh, I've spent probably $50 or $60, but I'm on level 670, so I've gone pretty far.
You're on level 670. What the hell does that mean?
It means I've completed 669 levels.
Okay. One of the things I've noticed, this goes back to even when Xbox Live Arcade was first launched, and they couldn't get any of the large publishers to give them content, so they went out to indie developers. They were at Indie Games Con. The Garage Games used to run in Eugene. This is probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And they were out there showcasing the Xbox Live Arcade and the brand new Xbox, and soliciting indies to put their games on there in a 70-30 split. Now this was a huge opportunity for the few indies that could take advantage of it. And I think we've seen the same thing. Anytime there's a new distribution model or a new distribution channel, and I think possibly PS4, PSN may be this today, there seems to be like a spike in the opportunity and the opportunities for success, because I mean, you can look at the new consoles, say 4 months ago, and say, well, there's a very small installed user base, right? So maybe it's not such a great play. But if you haven't invested 100 million, if you've just invested, several hundred thousand, it's probably not a bad play, especially if it's non-exclusive. So, what do you see any your crystal ball? Do you see any new distribution channels that might be providing those opportunities? Do you see any now, and do you see any in the foreseeable future?
Well, and that's back to the question about big internet companies buying into the space. Amazon and Facebook are going to become an opportunity for a lot of indie developers. I'm not suggesting that anybody should invest a lot making virtual reality games, but if Facebook is serious about it, Facebook decides to manufacture, Oculus headsets and drop one off on every Facebook user's front door, then you want to be there. If they instead decide to make it and charge $1,000 for it, and it ends up like Google Glass, who cares? It's not an opportunity. So I pay attention to that. I think Amazon with Fire TV is laser focused on attracting development talent to create content for their Fire TV. It's just that they made it an Android platform, so it makes it look an awful lot like they'll just take any old cell phone game that's made for Android. So I don't really know the answer yet, but if Amazon wants to be a player, if Facebook wants to be a player, that's great. That's really good for the industry. Microsoft paying that much for Mojang is saying, if you have that kind of success, which is somewhere between 50 and 100 million downloads, paid downloads, then Microsoft will pay you, a couple $2 billion as well. So I think that'll encourage some more risk taking. But if you played Minecraft, it is kind of a once in a lifetime, game that just resonated with a lot of people.
Speaking, you were talking about Bill Gates' presentation in 2000 and how that inspired you, and his view of the integrated living room, which so far they've never been able to achieve. It looked to me that when they launched the Xbox One, that was part of their vision, was they wanted to really make this a place where you walked into you talked to your Xbox, and ran your TV, and it showed you your movies, and it remembered all this stuff. Then it watched you eat your soup. Pretty much an epic fail there as far as the marketplace goes. And things come to mind like Zune and all these other things. How is it that they keep missing it? What do you think?
I think Connect was a half-baked idea. I think that somebody at Microsoft, probably Don Matrick, concluded that everybody is just going to love a microphone array and a camera on them all the time. And I think that both prompted the average consumer to be worried about their privacy. So I think most people prefer not to have Connect. I think the selling point of the microphone and camera was that you can tell your Xbox to pause, but gosh, if there was just an Xbox app on your iPad, you could just hit the pause button. I have to say I actually watch Netflix on my Xbox One, and I do say Xbox pause, but the reason I do is I don't know which button on my frickin' Xbox controller is pause. I think I have to hit X. No, I think I have to hit X, and then I have to hit the right analog stick to toggle over to pause and hit pause. There probably is like a left trigger button or something, but I don't know what it is. And so, but that's Microsoft making things more complex than they need to be. And I remember with my Xbox One, 360, I had a little remote control that had a pause button, and I actually used it when I watched Netflix. So it's pretty simple. I'd rather not buy that, but but an iPad app would work fine. So I think Microsoft over-engineered their vision. Consumers didn't respond favorably, and then Microsoft made the huge mistake of trying to convince consumers that they should pay for the privilege of having this camera and microphone array violating their privacy 24/7. And people didn't want to do it. So the PS4 is outselling the Xbox One. I think that's a big hole Microsoft dug themselves. But with that said, that doesn't mean that we're not going to use the box for Netflix. I think you can watch the popularity of Netflix streaming, and it is perfectly correlated with the introduction of Netflix as an Xbox 360 feature, and it jumped again when it was available on PS3, and jumped again when it was available on Wii, and jumped yet again when it turned into an iPad app. So Netflix has thrived because people are able to connect their television to the internet. If you pay attention to Best Buy, who I cover, and they've stopped saying that finally, but they were saying for years that the smart TV upgrade cycle was going to save them, because they just assumed that we all had to have a TV with built-in internet connectivity, and Microsoft and Apple said, no, you don't. Use our console, use our tablet, and they'll connect to the internet for you. A Roku box will do it. So it ends up, in Chromecast stick now, it ends up that we do in fact access the internet to watch content on our television, and sometimes we use the Xbox. What passed Microsoft by was that you don't need this $500 now $400 piece of hardware. You can buy a $35 Chromecast stick and it'll do the same thing. I think that Bill Gates didn't see that coming back in 2000, because I don't think he conceived of wireless internet. That's something that was too far away, for him at the time, and now it's so obvious.
Yeah, I think, it's the things that we don't see that really make the market, isn't it? I'd like to ask you some questions about another area that's probably maybe dicey, but since you've spent all that money in Candy Crush, what are your thoughts on monetization in the free-to-play or item sale sort of model? What's the deal with that? I know some of the smartest people that I know, friends and clients, who just struggle with it almost on a daily basis, trying to hit that sweet spot, which obviously somebody hit with you. Any thoughts on why this particular nut is so hard to crack?
That it's balance, and if you pay attention to the games that people complain the most about, the free-to-play, it's the ones that you can't complete without spending money. So people hate that. And if you look at the ones that are the most popular, they're the ones that you can complete without spending money, and that would be Candy Crush. You can. And I think finding that balance where a reasonable number of people voluntarily pay is nirvana for people. That if you make it too easy to complete without spending money, then you won't make any money. If you make it too hard to complete unless you spend money, then people will get frustrated and quit. It's the guy who, I'll tell you where I first spent money on Candy Crush for real was every 15 levels you complete an episode and you come to a gate and they tell you, if you're on Facebook, ask 3 friends to help you through the gate. Well, I found the first time I did it, I had to ask about 20 friends before 3 would let me through. And then I have 20 friends wondering why I'm spamming them, asking them to get me through. If you play on your phone only, you're not connected to Facebook, you have to complete a task, and you have to do 3 of them, and you must wait 24 hours between tasks. And they were pretty easy, but I just found myself waiting 3 days to resume play, and I thought, well, I don't want to wait 3 days. I just want to play the frickin' game, and I don't want to spam my friends. So it was only 30 cents on Facebook to get through the gate. So I spent 30 cents. Why would I not? And I did that till about level 300. And again, there's King not making very much money off of me, making 30 cents times 20, making $6 from me, and 300 levels for me was about 2 or 3 months. So they were not. I was not monitoring.
$6 a user on a game with that many users. Even
well,
if
everybody doesn't pay it. So,
5%, it's huge.
Yeah, but they monetize at about 3%, and their average is about $19 a month. And I was spending $2 a month. So I was bringing the average down. When I got to level 300, I started playing this game last November, so I got to 300 probably in January. But when I got to level 300, they started giving us a daily spin where we got a free item that you would otherwise buy. And I just spun the wheel, got the free item, and ignored it. And probably about 20 or 30 days into this, I suddenly had 20 or 30 items. And I got to a level where I was one turn from beating it, but I couldn't beat it. So I started using all my free items, and I beat it. And I went, oh, those are cool. I learned how to use the stuff that they wanted to sell me. Very smart. So I found myself on a level, 2 or 3 weeks later that I was stuck on, and 3 different times I got to one turn away from beating it, but I couldn't do it. And I finally broke down and I bought some of the items. I think I spent $1.99, and boom, they got me. And I've probably done that 10 times, and I've probably, and so I'm monetizing better. It's hard to do that. I recognize that I could have played it for free. It's just like, who am I going to tell? Okay, I told you I'm at level 670, and you're going to call me a cheater? Do you think less of me because I spent money? Who cares? I'm not doing this to brag about what level I am or to lord over you that I'm higher ranked. I'm doing it just to kind of finish it for a sense of accomplishment. It's different, I think, in a game like Hearthstone if you could buy your way to the top, but you can't. You can have all the cards and still get your ass kicked by somebody who just knows how to play them better than you. Yeah. So, again, Blizzard has balanced that game so well that what people tend to spend money on in these games is time. They tend to not, if you have more money than time, you will spend money to save time. And that's me. If you have more time than money, you won't.
I think you may have answered this, but we do have a question from our attendees, and this is, do you think the free-to-play equation has anything to do with content volume, that is the number of levels, how deep the game is, how long you can play it?
Wow. The answer is yes and no. Yes in a puzzle game, no in League of Legends. So, League of Legends, essentially you're playing the same game every single time. It's just that you like beating people. Hearthstone, same thing. You're on this ladder, and when you win, you move up the ladder. When you lose, you move down. And so people spend money because they're playing and someone plays a card that they don't have and beats them, and then they decide they need that card. So I guess Hearthstone would not continue to make money if they kept the number of cards static and they never added new ones. because everybody eventually would have all the cards and would not want to spend more money. So they have to constantly evolve the game, which means more levels, I guess. But it's the same game. So it's game design, and you're talking to a finance guy. I'm the last guy in the world who could design a game. But I think the term of art is compulsion loop. You've got to give the player a reason to come back and be compelled to advance, and that compulsion loop is the art of making the game. It's not the graphics. So if you look at Natural Motion, they have a game called CSR Racing. You can blaze right through that game and never spend a penny, and it's a great game. And when you finish, it says, "Congratulations, you finished." And it's beautiful and it's fun, but there's just no reason to spend any money. Zynga bought them, and Zynga's trying to rework all of their games to create that compulsion loop, so you feel like you do have to spend. And that's art. There's art to that. I don't know how to do it.
Well, there's a lot of motivators, isn't there? I mean, some of them, it's like in the case of Candy Crusher, to advance yourself in the game. And there's also the identifying with your avatar and wanting to dress them and put a nice outfit on them. There's the whole bling effect where people will spend a tremendous amount of money to get stuff that isn't more powerful and doesn't do anything but just enhance their in-game character. That's
the bacon wrap in Call of Duty a year ago. Not Ghosts, the one before it. They had bacon wrap on your weapon, and it added nothing. And I think it was $4 or something, and they sold 10 million of them. Might have been $2.
That's not nothing.
Another one. The best-selling item in Ghosts. Oh, go ahead.
Bacon.
Yeah, the best-selling item in Call of Duty Ghosts, the microtransactions, is the Snoop Dogg voiceover narrator. It's like they've sold 2 million units of Snoop Dogg doing the voiceover instead of whoever, Kiefer Sutherland or whoever the narrator is, and that's just brilliant. It's like, of course I want Snoop Dogg to be helping my experience in the game. It's lame, but it's brilliant, and he got paid a ton, and Activision made a ton of money on it.
Well, I'm firmly convinced that if people love the game enough, they would buy bricks on the highway.
Yeah, that's right.
Just buy a brick to put on the highway. We're building a road, buy a brick. It's $2.
Yeah.
And if they love the game and they're playing it, they're going to give you the $2.
Agreed.
I mean, it used to work in the freemium model back when, games were coming on little plastic 5-inch discs, And they'd give them away and say, if you like the game, send us $20. And the guys were making a living doing that years ago. Let's see what else I got here. I'm not sure how aware of this you are, but I'd like your thoughts on this. One of the things that's been happening, and this is impacting a lot of smaller developers, especially on the Steam platform, and that is price erosion in the smaller games. I mean, I've had clients who've actually priced their game for more than they thought it was worth, so when they put it on sale, they could get what they thought their game was worth, or they were going to end up having to get half what they thought their game was worth if they didn't. I think more than half of the people who buy games on Steam wait for them to go on sale. First of all, I guess, how do you plan for this, and what does it say about the consumer market in terms of their willingness to spend money and wanting to get the best value for their dollar, I guess?
I think consumers are trainable, and I think they're trained. So, in the console market, not Steam, we know that the brand new game is $60. We know that if we wait, 6 months or more, it'll be $40, and if we wait a year or two, it'll be $20. So consumers are trained, but the publishers are pretty disciplined about when they discount. On the PC market, you're right. I mean, consumers are trained to look for discounts. Steam is pretty good at encouraging developers to take discounts. And I think that actually has kind of hurt the market on the one hand. But the other hand, gosh, for $10 or less, you can buy some really, really great games. So, I think that the answer is discipline. And the thing is, at each price point, the market's a different person. So, we all like bargains. I find myself taking my kids into a dollar store occasionally, and I just can't believe all the stuff we get. Even though that's not my preferred place to shop. I still will buy, you know, a tube of toothpaste for $1 and think, wow, I got a deal. But you really do have people who only shop at the dollar store. So the sale should be for that guy, the guy who really can't afford the experience unless you sell it to him for $10 or less. Unfortunately, you train the guy who can't afford to pay, you know, 20 or even 50 for the game to wait. And I don't know how you do it other than just to be disciplined in your pricing strategy.
One more, and I guess this kind of goes to Steam, but I'd like your thoughts on where this is going. You know, one of the things that recently occurred with Steam is they started this. They've been slowly and steadily expanding the ability for user-generated content to be sold, and then a percentage of those sales to go to Steam, a percentage to go to the creator, and a percentage to go to the admin.
Oh, I just had something loud go off over my head, so I want to go turn off. Up. Can I go? Give me a 30-second break. I can barely hear you. Give me a second.
Yeah. Sounds like somebody's doing laundry, folks. We'll be right back. Let me see. I can just think of June. Why game design weapon arts. Okay, so yeah. I know that, Wombat. But there's, I was reading Chris's question.
I'm back. Sorry.
Yep.
All right.
Oh yeah. So anyway, so the Steam Marketplace, and it's kind of an interesting model because the creator of the user-generated content gets some of the money.
Right.
Obviously, Valve takes its cut, but also the developer gets money. And I'm just wondering if you think that this is, whether this is the opportunity that I think it is, and whether this needs to actually be designed for, or if you can just sort of slap it on a game.
I think that Phil Harrison's job at Microsoft is to develop that marketplace for Xbox, and so I think you're going to see a lot of it. Obviously, it takes, you know, a roadmap when the game is developed. So the games like Little Big Planet, you know, had tons and tons and tons of user-generated content, but it wasn't. I don't think they ever had a marketplace for it. But I think you'll see that, and you're certainly able to see that. Like Valve always encouraged people to mod their games and didn't sell anything, but they absolutely could have with Portal. I remember seeing really cool Portal levels. Obviously, Counter-Strike was kind of born out of Half-Life. So the opportunity is immense, and I think what's fun about the games industry is that every developer is a gamer, and every developer has the skill set to mod anybody's game, and so you've got kind of limitless creative force working if you give these people an incentive to do it other than just pride, which is really what Little Big Planet was. Yeah, sure. I think that the user experience will be amazing. I would never attempt to put something up that I created, but I certainly would. I think we would all have much, much more to choose from. I mean, I remember, and I was a PC gamer. I remember Doom 3, which was the darkest game I've ever seen, and I kept getting killed from behind or whatever. I remember, that somebody added tape so I could tape my flashlight to my weapon, so I didn't have to put my weapon down to pick up my flashlight. Yeah. I could spin around quicker, and it was just a patch. And it was brilliant, but would I have paid for that? Shit, I would have paid $10 for that. So those kinds of things, I think, not just levels, but I mean just even little mods and patches in games, I think people can make a huge living out of. But you've got to design the game in the first place to allow for it, and that's, Valve is the master of that. I think, as I said, Media Molecule did it with Little Big Planet, but you need to start building that stuff into games. And the problem with that, back to the first question, is the companies like Activision aren't going to want that. They're going to want to keep it all themselves. So EA wants FIFA Ultimate Team, all the revenue to go to them. So to the extent that anybody comes up with something and makes a profit out of it, EA will wonder why we didn't come up with it. And again, back to that first question, there's no way that the 100 guys who work on FIFA are going to be as creative as the 10 million people who play FIFA. I mean, there's so many more people thinking about different things you can do with the game. Yeah, I think this is a huge opportunity for everybody, and I think that the ultimate result is a better experience for the consumer. If you have a better experience for the consumer, everybody wins. So it'll take a bold publisher to be the first. Microsoft sounds to me like they're going to be that publisher. I just don't know that they have content that lends itself to custom level design. It might be Gears of War. I doubt it's going to be the next Halo game.
Yeah. Well, what is it? It was a Quake, which is pretty much how I got in the industry. I recall there were over 126 levels, including user-generated levels, and I think it generated 30 levels.
Yeah, exactly. And they were always enlightened like that to allow people to come up with that. Make it an open architecture so people could mod the game.
My recollection is I did some work on with Trauma Studios. They did the Desert Combat mod for Battlefield 1942, and were ultimately hired by DICE. But at one point, after 6 months after the game, 8 months after the game had been released, a substantial portion, I mean more than 50% of the sales were being sold to people who wanted to play the mod, not people who wanted to play the game. So there was
That's great. Yeah.
There was a certain way that you could use this user-generated content back in the day just to create longevity with the game. How long did people play Quake? And games that were modded, because they'd form these huge communities. Being able to monetize that, I don't think was in anybody's mind at the time, because $40 for a game was a lot of money.
Right, but that's what I meant by everybody wins. I totally agree with you. Everybody wins if you do it right.
Yeah. What do you think about the fact that it seems that I mean, if you want to know where the industry's going, just watch what Valve's doing? Is that really it?
They're not always right. I mean, they're great game developers, and Steam was a simple concept executed flawlessly. But I think the Steam box is kind of a flop, and I don't think it's ever going to be a success. I think Valve saying that they're not going to be on virtual reality devices is short-sighted, because I think Facebook is going to spend whatever it takes to make that work.
Don't forget Sony too. Sony has I suspect Sony may be first to market with a commercial VR.
Yeah, Sony probably. I mean, I don't know. Can you name the last consumer product that Sony launched that was a resounding success? Because I'd say it was the Walkman in '79. I mean, the category they created, being first to market, because they were second or third to market with consoles. They were first to market with the Walkman, and that worked. I can't think, Betamax didn't work. I don't think they haven't done anything since '79. So I would not count on them being a big success with Morpheus. And I think they're going at it cheaply, and they're going at it with their own content. I mean, who's going to develop for it?
Yeah. Well, whoever they pay to develop for it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're probably right about it. I noticed. We're just about done here. Before I go off and on a tangent, talking about Carmack's keynote from the Oculus conference and how it was great to see somebody for a company that's got that much on the line get up and talk about everything that's wrong with their product right now. It's very refreshing. But I think Carmack's just like that. He tends to be honest, and because he looks at these problems as really great things.
Right. He's a thoughtful guy, and he's introspective, and that's important.
Yeah, most people in marketing would never think of problems as a good thing.
Right.
Michael, I guess our time is up. Let me see. The one thing I would mention, just for the attendees, these webinars are all recorded and they're up on through the IGDA website. And Chris Wombat-Crowell did point out to me that the June and July game design webinars were on the basics of monetizing and monetizing for MMOs. So if you want more on the design aspect of monetization, you could check those out. There's great information there. Michael, I can't thank you enough. This has been great.
Thank you.
I'm sure I'll see you on down the road, and thanks a lot. And
right,
I'll send you a link to this when it gets posted up.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was great. Bye, everybody. See you next time.